The Outcast. The twin moons of Solara cast an eerie blue glow over the dense forest, illuminating the small figure darting between twisted tree trunks. Zira's breath came in ragged gasps, her six-fingered hands trembling as she pushed aside low-hanging branches. The young Solaran girl's emerald skin was marred with scratches, her large, opalescent eyes wide with terror. Behind her, distant chanting echoed through the night. The purification ritual was reaching its crescendo, and Zira knew she had mere moments before they realized she was gone. The sacred oil still clung to her skin, leaving a faint trail of bioluminescence in her wake. Zira stumbled, her bare feet catching on an exposed root. She tumbled to the forest floor, biting back a cry of pain. As she scrambled to her feet, a memory flashed unbidden through her mind. Her mother's eyes, once warm and loving, now cold and distant, as the high priestess anointed Zira for the ritual. "You are unclean," the priestess had intoned, her voice devoid of emotion. "The weakness in your blood threatens the purity of our people. Through your sacrifice, we shall be cleansed." Zira had always known she was different. Her skin lacked the intricate patterns that adorned the other Solarans, and her bioluminescence was weak, barely visible even in complete darkness. But she had never imagined her own family would condemn her for it. A distant shout snapped Zira back to the present. They had discovered her absence. With renewed desperation, she plunged deeper into the forest, her heart pounding in her chest. The trees began to thin, giving way to rocky terrain. Ahead, Zira could make out the silhouette of towering structures against the starry sky. The ruins of the ancients. The abandoned city had always been forbidden, whispered about in hushed tones by the elders. But now it represented Zira's only hope for survival. She scrambled up the crumbling stone steps, her small form dwarfed by the massive alien architecture. As Zira delved deeper into the ruins, the sounds of pursuit faded. She found herself in a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with residual power. In the center of the room stood a dais, upon which rested a device unlike anything Zira had ever seen. Curiosity momentarily overcame her fear. Zira approached the device, studying its intricate patterns and pulsing lights. Without thinking, she reached out to touch it. A blinding flash erupted from the machine, enveloping Zira in a cocoon of energy. She felt a sensation of falling, of being stretched and compressed simultaneously. When the light faded, Zira found herself lying on cold, metallic ground, gasping for breath in an atmosphere that felt thick and alien. Gradually, her vision cleared, and Zira realized with a jolt that she was no longer in the ruins. Instead, she found herself in a dimly lit alley, surrounded by towering structures of metal and glass. Strange noises and acrid smells assaulted her senses. Zira huddled against a wall, overwhelmed and terrified. She had no idea where she was or how she had gotten there. As her eyes adjusted to the gloom, she noticed bipedal creatures moving about at the far end of the alley. They were unlike any beings she had ever seen. Tall, with pale skin and only 2 arms. A sound nearby made Zira flinch. A small furry creature emerged from behind a pile of discarded objects, regarding her with curious eyes. It approached cautiously, and Zira remained perfectly still, unsure if it was a threat. The creature, a cat, though Zira had no name for it, sniffed at her hand before rubbing its head against her arm. Despite her fear, Zira felt a small smile tug at her lips. She gently stroked the cat's fur, marveling at its softness. Well, what do we have here?" Zira jerked her head up, heart racing. One of the bipedal creatures stood at the entrance to the alley, regarding her with a mix of surprise and concern. It was a human, though Zira had no concept of humanity or Earth. The man, for it was a he, took a cautious step forward, hands held out in a non-threatening gesture. "Easy there, little one. I'm not going to hurt you." Zira pressed herself further against the wall, her whole body trembling. The human's words were incomprehensible to her. but his tone was gentle. He crouched down, maintaining a respectful distance. "My name's Jack," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "Jack, can you understand me?" Zira blinked, her large eyes studying the human intently. She shook her head, then mimicked his gesture, pointing to herself. "Zira," she said softly. Jack's eyes widened. "Zira, that's your name?" When she nodded, he smiled. "Well, Zira, you look like you could use some help. Are you lost?" Though she couldn't understand his words, Zira sensed no malice from the human. Slowly, hesitantly, she nodded. Jack's expression softened. "Okay, let's see if we can figure this out. Are you hungry?" He mimed eating, and Zira's stomach rumbled in response. She nodded again, more emphatically this time. Right then, Jack said, standing up. He held out his hand to Zira. "Come on, let's get you someplace warm and find you something to eat." Zira hesitated, looking from Jack's outstretched hand to his face. Everything about this world was strange and frightening, but something in the human's kind eyes made her want to trust him. With a deep breath, she reached out and took his hand. As Jack led her out of the alley and into the bustling streets of the city, Zira's mind whirled with questions and fears. She had no idea what awaited her in this alien world, but for the moment, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. The neon lights of the city reflected in Zira's wide eyes as she took in the sights and sounds of her new surroundings. Hover cars zipped overhead, their engines humming softly. Holographic advertisements flickered on the sides of towering skyscrapers, displaying products and services Zira couldn't begin to comprehend. Jack guided her through the crowded sidewalks, keenly aware of the strange looks they were receiving. He had pulled his jacket off and draped it over Zira's shoulders, partly to keep her warm and partly to shield her from prying eyes. Still, there was no disguising her alien nature. "Almost there," Jack murmured, more to himself than to Zira. He led her down a side street, away from the main thoroughfare. The buildings here were older, their facades weathered and worn. Jack stopped in front of a nondescript door and pressed his palm against a scanner. With a soft beep, the door slid open. "Home sweet home," Jack said, ushering Zira inside. The interior was a stark contrast to the sleek, futuristic city outside. It was cluttered but cozy, filled with mismatched furniture and shelves overflowing with books and curious gadgets. Zira stood in the center of the room, unsure what to do. Jack bustled about, clearing space on a worn couch. "Here, sit down," he said, patting the cushion. When Zira didn't move, he gently took her hand and guided her to the seat. As Zira settled onto the couch, Jack disappeared into another room. He returned moments later with a bowl of something steaming. "It's just soup," he explained, offering it to her. "Nothing fancy, but it's warm and filling." Zira sniffed at the bowl cautiously before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened in surprise at the pleasant taste, and she began to eat more eagerly. Jack watched her with a mix of curiosity and concern. "What am I going to do with you?" he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Can't exactly call the police, or child services, for that matter." As Zira finished her soup, exhaustion began to overtake her. The events of the day, the ritual, her escape, the strange journey to this alien world, caught up with her all at once. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she slumped against the arm of the couch. Jack carefully took the empty bowl from her hands. "Sleep," he said softly. "We'll figure things out in the morning." As Zira drifted off to sleep, Jack sat in a nearby chair, his mind racing. He had always believed there was life beyond Earth, but he never expected to find proof in a back alley of New Pittsburgh. Whatever had brought this alien child here, whatever she was running from, Jack knew he couldn't abandon her. With a sigh, he stood and retrieved a blanket, gently draping it over Zira's sleeping form. "Welcome to Earth, kid," he whispered. "Let's hope it treats you better than wherever you came from." As the night wore on, Jack made a series of encrypted calls, reaching out to contacts he hadn't spoken to in years. If he was going to protect Zira, and unravel the mystery of her arrival, he would need help and discretion. The wheels were set in motion, and as dawn broke over the city, Jack knew that both his life and Zira's were about to change forever. Unlikely guardian. The next morning, Zira awoke to the unfamiliar sounds and smells of Jack's apartment. For a moment, panic gripped her as she struggled to remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, and she sat up, clutching the blanket tightly around her. Jack was already awake, sitting at a cluttered desk surrounded by holographic displays. He turned as Zira stirred, offering a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" Zira blinked at him, still unable to understand his words. She mimicked the upturn of his lips, attempting to smile back. Jack's expression softened further. "Right, language barrier," he muttered. "We'll have to work on that." He stood, gesturing towards the kitchen. "Hungry." As if on cue, Zira's stomach rumbled. She nodded eagerly, following Jack to a small table. He set about preparing a simple breakfast, all the while keeping up a steady stream of chatter. "I've got a friend coming over later," Jack explained, though he knew Zira couldn't understand. "Dr. Ilara Chen. She's a xenobiologist, studies alien life. Don't worry, she's trustworthy. We go way back." Zira watched him curiously as she ate, her large eyes taking in every detail of her surroundings. Jack's apartment was a hodgepodge of advanced technology and antique curiosities. Holographic interfaces coexisted with old paper books, and sleek gadgets shared space with hand-carved figurines. As they finished eating, a chime sounded throughout the apartment. Jack tensed slightly, then relaxed as he checked a small device on his wrist. "That's Ilara," he said, moving to the door. A moment later, a woman entered the apartment. She was shorter than Jack, with kind eyes and an air of quiet intelligence. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she caught sight of Zira. "Jack," she breathed, "when you said you needed my help with something unusual, I didn't expect this." She approached Zira slowly, her expression a mix of wonder and professional curiosity. "Zira," Jack said, gesturing to the alien girl. "This is Dr. Chen, Ilara." He repeated the introductions, pointing to each of them in turn. Dr. Chen crouched down to Zira's eye level. "Hello, Zira," she said softly. "It's nice to meet you." Over the next few hours, Dr. Chen conducted a series of non-invasive tests, all the while chatting soothingly to Zira. Jack watched nervously, ready to intervene if Zira showed any signs of distress. But the alien girl remained calm, seeming to sense Dr. Chen's good intentions. "Well," Dr. Chen said finally, turning to Jack. "Physically, she seems healthy, though her biology is fascinatingly different from ours. I'd need more advanced equipment to do a thorough analysis." Jack nodded. "And a language barrier." Dr. Chen reached into her bag and pulled out a small disc-shaped device. "This should help. It's a neural language adapter, still experimental, but it's shown promising results with other extraterrestrial species." With Zira's cautious permission, they attached the device to her temple. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Zira's eyes widened, and she let out a small gasp. Can you understand me?" Jack asked hesitantly. Zira nodded slowly, her voice trembling as she spoke her first words in English. "Yes, I can understand you." Jack and Dr. Chen exchanged amazed glances. "Zira," Dr. Chen said gently, "can you tell us where you came from? How did you get here?" Haltingly, Zira recounted her story, the ritual, her escape, and the strange device that had transported her to Earth. As she spoke, Jack's expression darkened. "They were going to sacrifice you?" he asked, his voice tight with anger. "Your own people?" Zira nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "They said I was impure, a threat to their genetic purity." Dr. Chen placed a comforting hand on Zira's shoulder. "You're safe now," she assured her. "We won't let anyone hurt you." Jack paced the room, running a hand through his hair. What are we going to do, Ilara? We can't exactly enroll her in school or put her in the system. Dr. Chen thought for a moment. I have some contacts in the extraterrestrial relations department. They might be able to help, but... She trailed off, her expression troubled. But what? Jack pressed. But they might also want to take her into custody for study. Dr. Chen finished reluctantly. You know how the government can be with anything extraterrestrial. Jack's jaw clenched. That's not an option, he said firmly. He turned to Zira, his expression softening. Zira, would you like to stay here with me? At least until we figure things out. Zira looked up at him, hope shining in her large eyes. You would let me stay? Jack nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, kid, I would. Over the next few weeks, Jack's life transformed entirely. His apartment, once a cluttered bachelor pad, now bore signs of Zira's presence. Colorful drawings adorned the walls, and a small bed had been set up in the spare room that had previously served as storage. Jack threw himself into the role of guardian with unexpected enthusiasm. He spent hours teaching Zira about Earth culture, answering her endless questions with patience, and often learning alongside her. Dr. Chen visited regularly, continuing her gentle studies of Zira's biology and helping to educate her about human customs. One evening, as Jack was tinkering with an old hoverbike in the living room, Zira approached him hesitantly. Jack, she said, her voice small. Can I help? Jack looked up, surprised. Then he smiled, gesturing for her to come closer. Sure, kid. Come here, let me show you how this works. As he guided Zira's hands, showing her how to adjust the anti-gravity modulator, Jack felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. He had always been a loner, more comfortable with machines than people. But now, watching Zira's face light up as she successfully calibrated the device, he realized how much his life had been lacking. You're a natural, he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. Zira beamed up at him, her emerald skin glowing faintly with happiness. Later that night, as Jack was tucking Zira into bed, she asked a question that caught him off guard. Jack, she said softly, what does family mean? Jack paused, considering his words carefully. Well, he said finally, family it's the people who love you, who take care of you, who stand by you no matter what. Zira was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she looked up at Jack, her large eyes shimmering. Are we family? Jack felt his throat tighten with emotion. He reached out, gently squeezing Zira's hand. Yeah, kid, he said softly. I guess we are. As he left Zira's room, closing the door quietly behind him, Jack knew that his life had changed irrevocably. He had become more than just an unlikely guardian. He had become a father to a child from the stars. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, he was determined to protect her, to give her the love and acceptance her own people had denied her. Little did Jack know, the greatest challenges were yet to come. As Zira settled into her new life on Earth, shadows from her past were stirring, threatening to shatter the peace they had found. The next chapter of their journey would test the bonds of their newfound family in ways neither of them could imagine. Shadows of the past. 6 months had passed since Zira's arrival on Earth. The alien girl had flourished under Jack's care, her natural curiosity and quick mind allowing her to absorb Earth culture at an astonishing rate. She had even begun to attend online classes, carefully monitored by Jack and Dr. Chen to ensure her alien nature remained hidden. One crisp autumn morning, Jack and Zira were enjoying breakfast when an urgent news alert flashed across the holoscreen in the kitchen. Jack's fork clattered to his plate as he saw the headline. Unidentified object enters Earth's atmosphere, lands in Appalachian Mountains. Zira looked up, her large eyes questioning. Jack, what's wrong? Jack forced a smile, trying to hide his concern. Nothing, kid. Just some space junk. Nothing to worry about. But as the days passed, more reports surfaced. strange sightings in rural areas, unexplained energy signatures, and whispers of beings that didn't quite look human. Jack's unease grew, and he found himself checking the locks more often, jumping at unexpected noises. One night, as Jack was putting Zira to bed, she suddenly stiffened, her eyes going wide. "Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can feel them. They're here." Before Jack could respond, a blinding light flooded the room. The window shattered, and 3 tall, emerald-skinned figures stepped through. Their faces were eerily similar to Zira's, but their eyes were cold, devoid of emotion. "Zira, child of impurity," one of them intoned, its voice echoing unnaturally. "Your escape has disrupted the balance. You must be returned for the purification to be completed." Jack stepped in front of Zira, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "She's not going anywhere with you. This is her home now." The lead Xalaran tilted its head, regarding Jack with something akin to curiosity. "You do not understand, human. Her existence threatens the purity of our entire species. She must be cleansed." Zira clung to Jack's arm, trembling. "Please," she begged. "I don't want to go back. Don't let them take me." In that moment, Jack made a decision that would change everything. He grabbed Zira and bolted for the door, shoving past the surprised Xalarans. They raced down the stairs of the apartment building, the sound of pursuit close behind. As they burst out onto the street, Jack's old hoverbike sat waiting. He had never been more grateful for his habit of tinkering with machinery. They leaped onto the bike, and with a roar of the engine, they were off, weaving through the nighttime traffic of New Pittsburgh. The Xalarans gave chase, their own advanced technology allowing them to keep pace. Energy blasts sizzled past Jack's head as he pushed the hoverbike to its limits, Zira clinging tightly to his back. "Hold on, kid," Jack shouted over the wind. "We're going to make it." As they raced through the city, Jack's mind whirled. He knew they couldn't run forever. They needed help, and there was only one person he could think of who might be able to provide it. With a sharp turn, Jack steered the hoverbike towards the outskirts of the city, where the sprawling complex of Stellar Dynamics Research Center loomed, Dr. Chen's workplace, and their best hope for salvation. As they approached the center's gates, Jack saw a familiar figure waiting. Dr. Chen stood there, her face a mask of determination. She pressed a button on a device in her hand, and the gates swung open. "Hurry," she called as Jack and Zira zoomed past her. The gates slammed shut just as the Xalarans reached them, their energy weapons splashing harmlessly against the center's advanced shields. Inside the complex, Jack brought the hoverbike to a screeching halt. Dr. Chen rushed to them, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you both all right?" Zira nodded, still shaking. Jack managed a grim smile. "Thanks to you. How did you know?" Dr. Chen held up her wrist computer. "I've been monitoring for any alien energy signatures since Zira arrived. When I detected multiple signals converging on your apartment, I feared the worst." She led them quickly through the winding corridors of the research center, finally stopping in front of a massive vault door. With a series of complex commands, the door slid open, revealing a cavernous room filled with advanced technology. "Welcome to Project Sanctuary," Dr. Chen said, ushering them inside. It was designed as a safe haven for peaceful extraterrestrial refugees. I never thought we'd need to use it so soon. As the vault door sealed behind them, Jack finally allowed himself to relax slightly. He knelt down in front of Zira, placing his hands on her shoulders. "You okay, kid?" Zira nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't mean to bring trouble. Maybe I should go back with them. I don't want you to get hurt because of me." Jack pulled her into a tight hug. "Not a chance. You're my family now, remember? We face this together." Dr. Chen cleared her throat softly. "I hate to interrupt, but we need to plan our next move. The Xalarans won't give up easily, and I'm not sure how long even our defenses can hold them back." Jack stood, his expression hardening with resolve. Then we need to find a way to stop them for good. To show them that Zira isn't a threat, that diversity isn't something to be feared, but celebrated. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. I might have an idea, but it's risky, and we'll need help. As they huddled together, formulating a plan that would determine not just Zira's fate, but potentially the future of human-alien relations, Jack couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. 6 months ago, he had been a solitary mechanic, content in his isolation. Now, he was at the center of a conflict with interstellar implications, fighting for a family he never knew he wanted. Looking at Zira, seeing the trust and love in her eyes, Jack knew he would do whatever it took to protect her. The Accelerans had no idea what they were up against. Humanity might be young in the cosmic scale, but they had one thing the Accelerans seemed to have forgotten: the power of love, acceptance, and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. As alarms began to blare, signaling that the Accelerans had breached the outer defenses, Jack, Zira, and Dr. Chen steeled themselves for the battle ahead. The fate of 2 worlds now rested in their hands, and they were determined not to let either one down. Stand together. The alarms blared throughout the Stellar Dynamics Research Center as Jack, Zira, and Dr. Chen raced through the winding corridors. The sound of energy weapons and shattering equipment echoed in the distance, growing closer with each passing moment. We need to get to the quantum communications array, Dr. Chen shouted over the noise. It's our only chance to implement the plan. Jack nodded grimly, holding Zira's hand tightly as they ran. The young alien girl's face was a mask of determination, her earlier fear replaced by a steely resolve. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with 2 Acceleran soldiers. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and swung it with all his might, catching the first alien off guard. Dr. Chen, revealing a side of herself Jack had never seen, executed a perfect roundhouse kick that sent the second Acceleran crashing into the wall. "Dan, Ilara," Jack panted, impressed. "Didn't know you had that in you." Dr. Chen smirked. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Jack. Now come on, we're almost there." They burst into the quantum communications room, a vast chamber dominated by a towering array of crystalline structures and pulsing energy conduits. Dr. Chen immediately set to work, her fingers flying over holographic interfaces. "What exactly is this plan of yours?" Jack asked, keeping a watchful eye on the door. "We're going to broadcast a message," Dr. Chen explained, not looking up from her work. "Not just to Earth, but to every sentient species within range of our quantum network. We're going to show them Zira's story and the beauty that comes from diversity and acceptance." Zira's eyes widened. "But won't that put Earth in danger? If other aliens know about us?" Jack knelt beside her, his expression softening. "Sometimes, kid, you have to take a leap of faith. Hiding in fear isn't living. If we want a better future, for you, for Earth, for everyone, we have to be brave enough to reach for it." A loud explosion rocked the building, and the lights flickered ominously. "They're getting closer," Jack muttered, hefting the fire extinguisher. Dr. Chen cursed under her breath. "The system's damage. I can initiate the broadcast, but someone needs to manually maintain the connection from the control hub." She pointed to a small, exposed platform suspended above the energy core of the array. Jack's jaw set in determination. "I'll do it." "Jack, no," Zira cried, clinging to his arm. "It's too dangerous." He smiled down at her, ruffling her hair gently. "Hey, what did I just say about being brave? This is our chance to change everything, to make sure no one ever has to go through what you did." Tears welled in Zira's eyes, but she nodded, understanding. Jack turned to Dr. Chen. "Keep her safe," he said softly. As Jack made his way to the control hub, the door to the chamber burst open. The lead Acceleran strode in, flanked by several soldiers. Its cold eyes locked onto Zira. "Enough of this foolishness," it hissed. "The impure one comes with us now." "I don't think so," Dr. Chen said, stepping in front of Zira. She activated a force field, creating a barrier between them and the Xalarans. Jack now. Jack's hands flew over the controls, and the quantum array hummed to life. Energy crackled around him as the broadcast began. The Xalarans fired their weapons at the force field, which flickered dangerously. People of Earth, and all sentient beings who can hear this message, Jack's voice boomed, transmitted across vast distances of space. We stand at a crossroads. Today, we have a choice between fear and acceptance, between isolation and unity. As he spoke, holographic images flickered to life throughout the chamber and beyond, showing Zira's journey, her escape, her arrival on Earth, and the love and acceptance she had found with her new family. This child, Jack continued, his voice thick with emotion, was cast out by her own people for being different. But here on Earth, she found a home. She taught us that family isn't about blood or species. It's about love, understanding, and the courage to see beauty in our differences. The Xalarans had ceased their attack, transfixed by the images before them. Zira stepped forward, her voice joining Jack's in the broadcast. "I am Zira," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I was born Xalaran, but Earth is my home now. I am not a threat to be eliminated. I am a child, seeking love and acceptance, and I found it here, with humans who saw me not as an impurity, but as a gift." As Zira spoke, something remarkable happened. The lead Xalaran's cold expression began to soften, a flicker of emotion breaking through its stoic facade. "All my life," the alien said, its voice barely above a whisper, "I was taught that purity was strength, that difference was weakness. But looking at you now, child, I see strength I never imagined possible." The energy surrounding the quantum array intensified, the strain of maintaining the broadcast taking its toll on Jack. Sparks flew from the control hub, and he cried out in pain. "Jack!" Zira screamed, reaching out to him. In that moment, as Jack fought through the pain to keep the broadcast going, as Zira's love and concern radiated across the universe, something shifted. The Xalarans lowered their weapons, their rigid postures relaxing. "Enough," the lead Xalaran said, its voice carrying a new tone, one of wonder and regret. "We have been blind for too long. This child, this Zira, has shown us a truth we had forgotten." As the broadcast faded, Jack stumbled from the control hub, barely conscious. Zira ran to him, supporting him with strength belying her small size. The force field dropped, but the Xalarans made no move to attack. Instead, the lead alien approached slowly, its hands open in a gesture of peace. "We have much to learn," it said softly. "From you, from humanity, and from the child we once sought to destroy. If you would allow it, we would stay, not as conquerors or purifiers, but as students seeking to understand this diversity you value so highly." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her expression cautious but hopeful. "That can be arranged. But first, we need to make sure the whole world knows what happened here today." As emergency services and government officials began to arrive, drawn by the unprecedented broadcast, Jack looked down at Zira, who still clung tightly to him. "We did it, kid," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "We changed everything." Zira smiled up at him, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "No, Jack, we didn't change everything. We just reminded everyone of what really matters." As the sun began to rise over New Pittsburgh, casting a warm glow through the shattered windows of the research center, Jack, Zira, and their unlikely allies stood together, ready to face a new dawn, one of understanding, acceptance, and the limitless potential of unity and diversity. A new beginning. The weeks following the quantum broadcast were a whirlwind of activity. The world had been irreversibly changed by the revelation of alien life and the powerful message of acceptance that had been transmitted across the stars. Jack, Zira, and Dr. Chen found themselves at the center of a global conversation about diversity, inclusion, and the potential for interstellar cooperation. Government officials, scientists, and diplomats from around the world converged on New Pittsburgh, eager to learn more about the Salarians and the young alien girl who had brought about this paradigm shift. Zira, once hidden away for her own protection, now stood proudly beside Jack as they addressed the United Nations. Her emerald skin glowed under the lights as she spoke, her voice clear and confident. "I came to Earth as a refugee, fleeing the society that saw my differences as a threat," she said, her large eyes scanning the assembly. "But here, I found a home. I found a family. And now, I hope that together, we can build a future where no one, human or alien, ever has to feel unwanted or afraid because of who they are." The chamber erupted in applause, and Jack felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. He placed a gentle hand on Zira's shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. As the applause died down, the Secretary General stepped forward. "In light of these extraordinary events, we are pleased to announce the formation of the Interstellar Cooperation Initiative. This program will facilitate cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and diplomatic relations between Earth and other sentient species." Dr. Chen, standing nearby, couldn't help but smile. Her life's work of preparing for peaceful extraterrestrial contact was finally coming to fruition, in a way she could never have imagined. The Salarians, true to their word, had remained on Earth as students of humanity's diversity. Their presence had initially caused some alarm, but as they integrated into society, learning and sharing in equal measure, fears began to fade. The lead Salaran, who had introduced itself as Zorn, had become a frequent visitor to Jack and Zira's home. One evening, as they sat in the living room that had once been Jack's solitary domain, Zorn spoke softly. "We have much to atone for," it said, its eyes filled with a remorse that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Our pursuit of genetic purity nearly cost us the greatest treasure in the universe, the beauty of diversity." Zira, curled up next to Jack on the couch, smiled at the alien she had once feared. "We all have room to grow," she said wisely. "What matters is that we're willing to learn and change." Jack nodded, absently tinkering with a small device, an old habit he couldn't quite shake. "You know," he mused, "I used to think I was happy alone, that I didn't need anyone. But now—" He looked at Zira, then at Dr. Chen, who had become a constant presence in their lives, and even at Zorn. "Now I can't imagine life any other way." As the conversation flowed, touching on topics from Salaran culture to Earth's history, a gentle alert chimed from Dr. Chen's wrist computer. Her eyes widened as she read the message. "It's from the quantum array," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We're receiving responses to our broadcast from all over the galaxy." They gathered around as Dr. Chen projected the messages into the air. Holographic representations of various alien species flickered to life, each sharing their own stories of struggle, acceptance, and the power of diversity. Some had faced challenges similar to Zira's, while others offered wisdom from societies that had long ago embraced the strength found in differences. As they watched, a realization dawned on them all. Earth's first major step into the galactic community hadn't been through advanced technology or military might. It had been through compassion, through the simple act of a human man choosing to love and protect a child who was different. Zira's eyes glistened with tears as she looked up at Jack. "You saved me," she said softly, "but you also showed the universe what humanity is capable of at its best." Jack pulled her into a tight hug, his own eyes misting over. "We saved each other, kid. And now we get to help save everyone else too." As the night wore on, and the messages continued to pour in from across the stars, the unlikely family, human, Salaran, and the child who bridged two worlds, sat together, filled with hope for the future. They had faced fear, prejudice, and the unknown, and had emerged stronger for it. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and those who resisted change. But they would face it all together, armed with the most powerful force in the universe, the strength found in diversity, acceptance, and love. As Zira drifted off to sleep, nestled between Jack and Dr. Chen, with Zorn watching over them all, Jack realized that their story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. A new chapter for humanity, for the Xalarans, and for countless other species across the galaxy. And it had all started with one simple choice: to see the beauty in differences and to stand up for those who needed protection. As the stars twinkled outside, promising new adventures and discoveries, Jack knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else. Together. The end.